Emma. This is such a cool shot. Thank you for sharing it with me. Thank you for the opportunity to review it with you. And I think it's looking really awesome. It's really dynamic and it's really fun to watch. It's clearly a ton of work that you put into this. And I think there's some areas where you were looking to push things a little bit more, and we can definitely talk about that. And I think there's some spots where maybe we can work in a little bit more offset areas where the body's kind of moving a little bit too much together. Areas where I think we could add a little bit more follow through, especially in like some spots where we'll see what the hips are doing and some of these like really big swinging movements. I think we could go even further with how far out they're swinging and kind of continuing movement and momentum that's already started. And then lastly, I think there's some areas where you can add a little bit more of a shape change, especially in some of like the jumps and tucks and stuff like that. So I will explain to you what I mean, and let's get started. Okay, so let's just take a look together. I will hide some of my really quick circles in here. Awesome. It's really cool. I love the pacing of everything. Um, I'm actually mostly just going to comment on the main guy here because I only have so much time, and he's I feel like the hero character of the whole story. So the notes that I have for you are mostly going to be related to him, but then you can always take some of these and apply it to the creature character as well. So just like right off the bat here, you can kind of see this guy. I don't know what's happening out of frame, but this entire pose, it almost looks like a little toy where he's kind of just being like moved and translated in space here. So just watch for any areas like that where his shape to camera doesn't change very much over a few frames. He looks really still. And then when you come here, you have the good rotations that are starting and the offsets in the body. When you get to here, I think I wrote this is a big ask of his arm and hand. And you can even see like his hand is like almost breaking here. I think rather than his arm pulling his entire body while it's in midair around like that, I think you could use his arm as more of like a post that his body is swinging around. You already have his hips and momentum of his hips coming up this way. So rather than like kind of pushing them back towards his arm, because his arm is pulling them, if he, leaves his arm down as like a straight post, and then, his hips continue from what they're doing, here, 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 and then they kind of stop. Keep them coming like up and around this way. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me like try to draw some circles in here. So here, here, here. So like keep them coming like closer to space, closer to us, closer to us. So he would be, his head would be here, and his hand doesn't have to break quite this much. So this will be a bigger swing for him to come all the way around his arm like that. So it'll give a little bit more dynamics to that timing, and it won't feel quite as much like he's got this like superhuman strength where he's just pulling himself from his body being all the way behind him to kind of all the way. This just looks like it's not really grounded in proper physics here, is what I'm trying to say. So maybe even like something I mentioned was like shape changes that could be used. So right now it looks like his body's kind of like his chest is rotated down, his legs are coming out, but I think maybe you want like more of this shape in here, so that when he, if this is his chest, like his hips would be back in space here, so that when his hips come out this way, it's more of a contrast of like, this backwards C shape to then swinging all the way around. And then the way that he's in space up here looks a little bit like he's just kind of floating. And this will change, once if you do this like bigger swing that I'm suggesting, he'll have more room for the hips to make this like bigger arc up here. Okay. And then when he gets to this point here, I think you can have another shape change in the body where his chest is kind of going back more. And his head's going back a little bit more. So you can drag a little bit more. So he goes from, this C shape to coming up and around. And then, he's a little bit more contained in his pose up here to then stretched out here as he's coming down. And then as he lands, you can kind of then bring the chest and head forward a bit. And this will give you more variety in this part, because the next thing I was going to say is this is kind of all in one pose here. So if he hits this pose in a little bit more, if he's leaned back and then kind of crunches down, like you have somewhere to go from his chest to be back and then crunch down, and his head can crunch down as he hits. Like that's kind of his like impact, and then he stretches back out into this pose. So he's not in this like lengthened pose this whole time. And then I think in here you could play around with like a big facial change as he's about to kind of launch off here. And the arm's pretty still through here too. You have like some really nice secondary stuff on the legs and the sword. I think the arm's feeling a little bit still, and the face and head are feeling a little still. So just make sure you keep them engaged too. And I apologize for this like really rough drawing, but hopefully the intention is there, that this is kind of like a lean back, and then this would be, an impact and a time for like a little bit more of a C shape as he's like crouching down, and then he can get back into the pose you have him. And then here's another opportunity for like, more of a crouched pose as he's getting ready to do his jump up. And then here it kind of looks like his butt is behind his legs, but I would have this be from this crouched pose. I think his butt would have continued to come forward. So I think bring his hips forward a bit here. So this is curved the other way. His body's curved the other way. You can keep his feet, but I think that this is, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. So if his chest is coming forward, leading this action, then his butt would be behind. So by the time you get here, this is another area here where it feels like he's kind of floating in one shape. So in terms of follow through on this, like keep the hips going, track the hips in perspective space all the way up here. And, maybe the legs are dragging behind and it's hard to see because they're right behind him. So actually, this is a good note too for making sure you're not like always completely losing legs behind the knees and stuff like that. So yeah, bring his hips forward here so that so bring his hips forward here. So as they come back, dragging behind him, they have somewhere that they're coming from. And again, just make sure in perspective, you track the arc of the hips and make sure they're doing the right thing there. You can probably do a little bit more drag back with the head here, just looking for more areas to, like, this is a nice C shape you have going on here. But then as the hips come down, they kind of stop in here. So make sure you have enough follow through in this area as well. Like if you look at in screen, this also might be fighting the camera move. But from this frame to this frame, it feels like his body is stopped. So make sure you follow through. Actually, it's like a few frames in here. Make sure you just keep the hips following through. And then again, this is a good spot to add like even more I'm, kind of hiding behind his arm there. I'm just trying to see what he's actually doing to swing himself up. But in any case, this is another instance where you could do like more of a crouch here, because he's about to stretch into a pose coming up here, and then you know, crouch again up here. So instead of him kind of being in this half crouched pose as he's coming up this whole time, this can be more crouched, like he's balled up here, stretched out here. You know, you can lengthen a leg and bring his head and chest up to lead that motion, and then more crouched up here. And then this is good, the way you have him stretching to come down. Double check that spacing in there, but that might be a camera thing. And then again, I would drag his head back a little bit here, impact. You can probably feel more impact in the head and chest here. Right now it looks like they just immediately start coming forward. So maybe add another frame of impact on like the head dragging down. You see what I mean? Like here and here, it looks like he's just coming straight forward. Like he hasn't completely absorbed that impact yet. In the hips also. So like the whole body kind of hits the ground and then moves forward. So just make sure that it's like a proper wave of impact in the body from that like really big jump he had. And then just another follow through thing in this arm. I don't know if this is meant to be like a really broad, like, you know, slice at the creature, but if so, I would consider keeping his arm like straight through here, and, you know, twisting his whole body around. Because to me, this looks as if he's like swinging and missing, but he's only kind of bringing it up halfway and then bringing it back down. Like his arm's already bent here, but I feel like this would be a really broad swing, and then his arm wouldn't bend until it kind of had already missed and was coming back around. And his chest doesn't really rotate enough for me to believe that he was taking a real swing. If he's not swinging at him, then I apologize. It looks like this is a swing that the creature's jumping out of the way of here. And this is super cool. This is the spot here where I just think like the whole body is rotating together. So just look for stuff like that in your next pass too. Like, you know, arm, chest, hips. I love the expression stuff at the end. I think that's really awesome. Yeah. Super cool though. So I think pushing some of those shapes will give a little bit more dynamic to some of the spacing and the timing. Again, like some of that follow through, I think will help you out. You know, it'll just, you were asking about ways to push it. I think it will just make everything feel a little bit bigger. You know, you'll have more room to play with if you have a shape to come from and a shape to go to. And, you know, a broader like sweep of the body and a follow through of the body, rather than, you know, cheating some of those big arcs short where you can make them like really swing around his whole like arm that's holding him up, or his arm that's swinging him upwards. Just like really go for it, really see how far you can arc his whole body around there. And you've got a lot of really good like drag in the legs happening. Some of it's being hidden behind the rest of his body just because you have a lot to camera. So just you know, keep an eye on stuff like that. Like do a pass on, you know, cheating some of the limbs, so we can, you know, get a clear silhouette on some of those reads. And I think those are the main thing. There's just a couple areas where it's like it said that the body kind of feels like it's moving together, whether it's like while he's in the air, or you know, the very beginning where he's kind of behind the roof, or, you know, at the end where he's turning like that. Just do a frame by frame pass on some of that stuff. And yeah, I think this is looking really awesome. I think the creature is awesome. Like again, most of the notes I had were on the hero, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't apply some of that stuff to another pass on the creature as well. He's just the one I was paying the most attention to, was the hero character. But it's a really great idea. It's really, really fun to watch. I think this is a really, really great piece of animation. So thank you again for sharing it with me. Thank you for the opportunity to review it. And I hope you keep working on it and pushing it even more because it's in such a great spot right now. So, all right, good luck with everything. Thanks.